The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Planted with Sara Pion. I'm Sara Pion, your host, and today we have George Jage, who is the co-founder and CEO of Unpacked and the founder of Jage Media. So today I'm excited. We're going to talk about the premiere of Unpacked, which is the first THC consumer packaged goods trade event. Welcome, George. I'm so excited to have you here.
Sara, thank you so much, and I'm so excited to be here as well.
So I always like to ask my guests, what got you interested in cannabis? And actually, if we could backpedal a little bit more before that, if you're comfortable, what was your first cannabis experience?
I was just thinking that when you were saying that, and it was actually me and my best friend Lyle. I think I was 14, and we ended up buying a bag of mostly stems and seeds from Tom. I'll leave his last name out of it. I had a pretty early relationship with cannabis. I enjoyed it. I had a modest herbal distribution business in my later high school and early college years, just helping friends because I had some pretty good connections. And it was just something that, I enjoyed as part of my life. And then, kind of post-college and kind of getting into the workforce and life and getting busy and trying to, run some businesses. I just really didn't really smoke that much. I'd bump into an old friend once in a while and get high, and I'd just get like sucked into like a stupid hole for like 4 hours because I'd kind of fallen out of condition, so to speak. A couple of trips to Amsterdam, over to Europe, and again, just getting access to some professional grade products kind of set me back a little bit, but nonetheless, occasionally, through most of my 20s and 30s, and it was just something I've always enjoyed. I always felt it should be legal. I certainly tried to work to support NORML while I was in college, pretty strong advocate for, more of a libertarian view of letting people do what they want with their bodies. And certainly, plant medicine is pretty much been around for 5,000 years.
Right. And cannabis has been a huge part of that.
Yeah.
So when I was looking at your bio, you've done a lot. I mean, Unpacked, I'm very excited about this event. But leading up to this, you've had a really rich history with media and cannabis. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. In cannabis in 2014, I built a couple of trade shows and business media assets, and I kind of got in the trade show industry really kind of, I wouldn't say by accident, but certainly wasn't, part of the plan. Just the opportunity presented itself. And I really fell in love with it because you get to create these events and really bring people together. And you see the effect of that is very exponential in helping people's businesses grow, helping them create success, connecting people that are trying to sell something with somebody who's trying to buy it. And that seller buyer might be information, it might be products and goods, services, or whatever the case may be. And then, I launched a trade show for the tea industry, which was the company I ran and owned prior to coming into the cannabis space. And it was a fascinating industry. And it was funny because, after I had exited that business, and guy calls me up out of the blue, and I didn't know him, but he and I had a mutual friend. He's like, George, so-and-so said that you're going to be available soon. Let's start a pot trade show. And I'm like, huh? And like, I was, I wasn't up to date on what was happening in Colorado and other markets, that cannabis could actually become legal in the United States. This was very early stage. And I said, okay, well, what'd you have in mind? He says, well, you'll run it and you can be in charge and we'll be partners. And I said, okay, so does that mean you're putting up the money? He says, I don't have it. Anyways, he was kind of a pretty outgoing person, and he had talked to a number of other people that were in the space, including at the time MMJ Business Daily, which was a small publication. And the owners of that had reached out to me and said they were looking for a publisher. And I said, well, great. If I find anybody that's a publisher, I'd be happy to connect you to them. But I'm really, more of a trade show kind of media, kind of conglomerate kind of guy. And really trade shows are where, as a business media company, you can really kind of, create a success for your business as a function of providing service to the community, not the other way around. And so I decided, what the heck, seems really interesting. I really love early market industries where there's a strong thirst for knowledge. There's a lot of kind of cloudy, uncertain spaces that you have to navigate and challenges that create opportunities to really help support an industry. And so I took a position as the president of MJ Biz Daily, or I rebranded as MJ Biz Daily and MJ BizCon. The owners were moving it to Business Media, and I went out to a couple places and I said, and then people would go, well, who are you with? And I'd be like, Business Media. And they're like, what's that? And I said, we publish MJ Business Daily. Oh yeah, I love that. So I didn't want to lose the great brand that they had, following that they had already created. But that was a fun experience. I mean, they had done a trade show with about 20 tabletops at a racetrack in Seattle the year before. And I was able to, really kind of bring that professional trade show event experience to the industry and create an event that, I grew from, with the help of obviously a great team, to, well over 1,000 booth show that we moved into the convention center prior to my exit from that business. And, it was a time when everybody needed to find a POS system, and they needed regulatory compliance software, and they needed extraction equipment and machines in the corner that go bing. And so there was a really strong need for, the supply side of the industry, certainly from 2014 through 2018. But I always knew when I was running that the industry was going to have a significant shift. The biggest trade show, or at least the most important trade show or trade event in any consumer packaged goods industry, is really a brand or retail focused trade show. And, every national show in our industry is a supply side show. And the only reason we don't have a national CPG show is we don't have a national market yet.
Right. Yeah,
we will.
We definitely will. That's been the really interesting thing, like watching the trade shows evolve. It's like I've been in the industry now since 2012, and watching them go from like smaller venues where, there are, everybody, there's like the people who have been in the industry for a while, and there were new people, to now like these huge venues where there are so many people, and you can tell like the look on people's faces when they're new to the industry and they're learning, and they're like sponges and they're absorbing everything that they're seeing. And then you see, those of us who, we also look at it as an opportunity to catch up with people that we haven't seen in so long, because every day in this industry we hit the ground running, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, why trade shows are so, important. I mean, first there's the opportunity to see friends, and we do business with people, not businesses. So, it's really being able to create those connections on a human level, and being able to read people's body language and look them in the eye, and, get to know somebody that will create the trust that you need to have to, create a business relationship that might be, critical to your success. And so, a lot of entrepreneurial spirit and passion and in this industry. And I kind of liken it, or kind of reference it as kind of almost like a Maslow's need hierarchy for your professional self, separate from your personal self, where you need to go and be in the room with the people that are doing what you're doing to really kind of validate that you're on the right path. And learning from peer-to-peer learning is always the most effective, form of learning, because you're talking to people that are walking in your shoes. They're making the same mistakes, or maybe they're making mistakes that you haven't made yet that you can avoid, or they've created some success in other ways that you can learn from. And I just think it's really such a critical part, and it's really the kind of the engines that drive commerce for most industries.
Right. And so with MJ Unpacked, what do you think is the greatest differentiator with what you're doing compared to what you've done before?
Everything. Um, so, we started this company back at the end of 2019 with support of Patrick Ray over at Canopy Boulder. He's been in the trade show space for a long time before he got into cannabis too, with New Hope Natural Products and Nutrition Business Journal. So he's got a lot of understanding of the B2B media space as well. And it was just a conversation we've been having for a couple of years since I left MJ Biz, and I was running Dope Magazine, which is a consumer media asset, for a while. The opportunity, really was starting to evolve. And again, in the future, the end game for cannabis events is going to be much more like that Natural Products Expo, where the brands and the distributors and the retailers are all there looking at what new products are out there and what new products they can bring to market, and, wining and dining their top clients, and, really kind of celebrating the industry around that. So we decided to start the company. We got fully funded in February of 2020, which was, great timing for, a company for an event company when the events industry was going to shut down effectively in a month for the next year and a half. It gave us a really kind of an interesting position because, we didn't lose 90 to 100% of our revenues from the year before because we didn't have any. The other thing was that most of those companies that had existing events were, negotiating with their customers or explaining to them why they're keeping their money. They had to walk back, venues and vendor contracts, and were kind of in free fall and kind of demoralized because they already had this anticipatory expectation of all the money they were going to make that year, and it washed away like overnight, right?
Yeah, that had to be stressful.
So, we were in a great spot where, we got to innovate, and we were the first company to go to market with a virtual trade show, and we used the MJ Unpacked brand for that as a virtual event. We did it for the Colorado market. Really focused on the brands and the retailers. We had some success, kind of like being the smartest kid in the remedial class. It might be doing great comparatively, but nobody was really going to graduate. Virtual events were very, very difficult, I think, both from an experiential standpoint for the attendees, and very difficult to generate revenue and scale those up, and start bringing in all sorts of new resources that you wouldn't normally have to produce something on a technical platform like that. I remember when we did our first event, the show, quote, opened, and I was sitting in my office by myself, and it was the most eerie and depressing thing ever, because I thrive on that excitement, the energy when you bring people together and you see them making connections, and you know that they're talking to the right person that's going to help them advance their career or create a business opportunity or create new jobs and create success. And you're just kind of in this echo chamber of silence, and it was just really eerie. But the show went on, and a lot of people were able to connect with other people. We had a very strong messaging platform inside the virtual event. We spent a lot of money really customizing the booth, where people could have avatars of themselves standing in their booths and the actual products that you could click and open up product images and videos and catalogs and download stuff. And we had some really fantastic educational sessions. But again, they were a struggle. And I'm glad that they're done, because, everybody at the end of 2020 was talking, we're going to do hybrid events next. And I think for some industries they work. Certainly you look at Microsoft and Amazon events that went from 20,000 attendees live to 200,000 attendees on their virtual platforms, because a lot more people had access to be able to attend them. Most, people were working from home, and they didn't necessarily have to get their boss's approval to go to something online or virtual event. But, for something that's more kind of data or kind of knowledge-based type of thing, I think that the virtual events and hybrid events can work really successfully. But at the end of the day, cannabis is just such a tactile industry. It's such a social industry, and it's about, hanging out and going out to dinner and smoking a joint with new friends and learning something new about people and seeing products and being able to really discover stuff.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I know, after your first virtual event, I actually saw some people who had put up screenshots and were talking about how cool it was and what an interesting concept. And it's an awesome thing But then there's also, as the pandemic started to continue, people started talking about, though a great tool, virtual events sometimes can be even more draining because you're not getting back the energy that you're giving when you're there. It's,
Right.
you know,
Yep.
and we are social creatures. And I also think that, signing up for virtual events, if you get busy doing something else, it's really easy to actually sign up and not attend. Whereas if you've got to go to a physical space,
Totally.
it demands your presence, right?
Yeah, and there was a lot of different models that were out there. Like there was one group that did something with really kind of a 3D avatar experience, and they were promoting that they were going to have 10,000 people at this event, and they were going to have 500 exhibitors, right? And they didn't, which I always get a little bit kind of perplexed when I see people who are producing events oversell, and that's something that we never do. We always want to overdeliver. And but I was talking to a few people who went to that event, and they said by the third day it was a bunch of people stoned off their ass that had figured out how to hack the system, fly around the event environment, and throw themselves off balconies. So which, hey, if you're stuck at home in the middle of a pandemic, and if you're going to have to go to a virtual event, I mean that would be a lot of fun to do, but
how
at the same time, I don't know how
undignified.
productive it is.
Well, we are a crazy bunch.
Indeed.
So with everything that, you've learned from the events that you've done in the past, and then this virtual world that we've been kind of ensconced in for a while, where do you see like the future of trade events? What do you see happening, or what would you like to see?
And that's a great question, Sarah. We spent a lot of time because of the pandemic, being able to really noodle that. And, I've been to a lot of events as an attendee. I've produced a lot of events, and, every kind of market has its own nuances and everything else. But, what really at the end of the day, the kind of the X factor of what creates success is the ability for, two people to sit down and have a conversation and really understand each other, and then explore opportunities to work together on a business level. And that we feel is the kind of formula for creating transactional value to everybody who's involved in an event. So walking that back a little further is like, most trade shows have these kind of bowling lane after bowling lane of booths, and people are scanning cards and handing out business cards, and that's creating lead generation, but it's not creating connectivity. And so looking at that, creating that connectivity, the other thing that really differentiates our event is that, we're exclusively for cannabis, CPG, brand, and retail executives. And we also know they need access to capital. So we're allowing accredited investors actively investing in the cannabis space to really create an event that has a feel and the productivity of an executive conference where 4 out of 5 people in the room are somebody you want to talk to.
Yeah.
It's not like walking into a big, Home Depot type of experience or Walmart type of experience, handing out business cards, and maybe 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 1,000 people in that room might be relevant to you, and you've got to hunt them down and find them. Really it's about quality over quantity. And so by qualifying our audience, which none of the national shows do on anything other than ticket price, gives us the opportunity to really have a very focused audience and create a very highly productive event. But we also wanted to incorporate that kind of discovery of a trade show. And as we're playing to where the puck is going in our industry towards that national CPG brand retail type of experience, asking a brand to come and spend $5,000 or $6,000 for a 10 by 10 booth that's got carpet and pipe and drape at any of the bigger national shows, and then they got to spend another $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 to build out a booth, hire union labor, store it, graphics, electrical, hauling it in, hauling it out, and all of those other expenses. I mean, that's just there's no way to get a return on investment in that.
Right.
Especially for a brand that might be operating in Washington. I mean, they can't go to an event in California or an event in Las Vegas or in Chicago and expect to be able to create any type of sales traction. And that's not what we're trying to do for the brands that are participating in our show. We know that the brands already are in contact with the retailers in their own markets to sell products to, either through their own sales team or through a distributor. But what we're offering is brands can take a brand showcase. They can set up their products so their whole kind of brand experience hall, not a trade show hall, really has a retail feel. So you can kind of have that discovery and go and look at products that are available all across the country in different state markets, and be able to discover this stuff. And then the brand reps aren't the people that are there with the brand. They're not stuck in their booth for 2 or 3 days. They get to move around. They get to interact. They get to play. They get to engage. And then each of the showcases has a QR code.
Mm-hmm.
We're working with Lucid ID on those QR codes, and you'll be able to scan the QR code, and it'll open up, the brand profile. You can download product information. You can watch videos. That creates a lead generation event for the brand. You can message the brand reps that are on site and say, hey, I'd like to meet with you right now. I want to bring your product to Oklahoma, or I want to invest money in your company. Or they can meet with, or they can schedule time on their calendar. But going back to, kind of the value proposition of brand is taking time to listen to what do the brands need right now. There is a tsunami of federal legalization or nationalization of our market coming. And if these brands don't, have access to capital to be able to, increase their production capabilities, expand into new state markets, and really start growing in advance of that nationalization, they're at risk of getting washed out to sea when the really big money comes in. And you already see, some of these MSOs have raised billions of dollars for acquisitions and product expansion and license acquisition. So, and they have access to capital at that level that most of the operators that have been, operating the space for 5 or 10 years don't have access to. So I think, creating that opportunity and the exit strategy for some of these brands and retailers is to sell to these big MSOs. So, bringing all of these groups into the room, creating this experience for them. Now, we do have some traditional exhibit booths that some of the brands with larger portfolios are taking, some of the contract manufacturers are taking, so they can set up a booth and say, bring your product to Nevada, bring your product to Oklahoma. We're the guys that can manufacture, girls that can manufacture it for you. We have a huge meeting area in the middle of the show floor. We're bringing in you'll love this, Sarah. I'm bringing in a gong. And I don't know why. I just woke up one day and said, I want to have a gong on the show floor, and I want people to bang the gong every time they get a deal done, right? Like, I want to create that type of excitement. So I was looking at gongs. There's a website called Gongs Unlimited for anybody in the gong market at the moment. And they have this gong called the Flower of Life gong. And it uses sacred geometry using 7 concentric circles. Brilliant, because of the marijuana leaf. That is a natural energy healing gong. So we're setting up this gong, and people can bang it. And Bang Chocolate has asked us if they can sponsor the gong. So the mallet will be a Bang sponsored mallet. But, I want people to have fun at our event. I want people to feel relaxed. I want people to feel like that they can just be themselves because they're in the right room with the right people and have a great experience and a productive experience.
It sounds in some ways like some of my memories of some of the earlier, smaller conferences where there weren't as many random people. People were there for a reason.
Yep.
I like that.
Yeah, and I think when I was running the MJ Biz, the first show I produced, there was 2 other shows in the market. NCIA had launched their first, and Canicon had launched their first back in 2014 or 15. And the next year there was 10, and the next year after that there were 30 trade show operators in the space. And it's like I said, a little frustrating when I see some of these people come into the space and say that they're going to do a show and have 10,000 people. And I saw one guy do a show in Colorado where he said he was going to have 10,000 attendees, and they actually had more exhibitors than attendees. That's like the epitome of like just a death zone, and people playing frisbee in the aisles. And just making sure that you don't overpromise. I mean, you really got to think through what is the need set for the different groups you want to engage. And if you want to try to engage everybody and be one of the trade shows that's just open to anybody willing to pay for a ticket, and you just want to sell tickets because you don't want to create value, then there's plenty of operators out there doing that.
Yeah, that's true. One thing I'm just noticing when you're talking about this and just the mix of people that you're getting together is really, it's ideal. It's kind of like some matchmaking because you've got, you know, the retailers and the brands need investors. Investors need to meet these people. And then we are looking at, the advent, I guess we're past the advent of MSOs. We have quite a few multi-state operators, and it's really interesting to see brands like, I mean, we were carrying Kiva when Kiva was itty bitty, and now you hear about all the different markets they're going into, and it's really nice to see the growth. What kind of what are you projecting as far as potential for some of these brands that are looking to grow to actually make connections to be either part of MSOs or to be MSOs themselves, through the matchmaking that you're doing at the conference?
Well, and the matchmaking is really very organic. We're not trying to set up structured meetings, but there's going to be a tremendous amount of connectivity through the app for people to schedule those meetings in advance. But let me walk back and talk about kind of the event design, because the way that we're setting up the kind of trade show hall with this kind of retail experience and the seating areas and kind of really cool stuff that people won't be able to see at other trade shows. We're also creating a money stage. This is kind of a traditional kind of micro cap event where companies that are looking to raise capital can pitch from stage in front of an audience of accredited investors, family offices, venture capital. Our main stage is really high level, retail pain and brand pain points. Like, we don't need to kind of have our cannabis 101, how to open up a retail store. Like, we're not looking to attract somebody that's looking to open up a business. This is an event for like the senior people who have really been driving this market for better part of the last decade, to find a home and have a place that can be, efficient, productive, and comfortable and hospitable to them. But when you walk into our event, we're creating this massive lounge, and the way I kind of envision this and the way we're designing this is like a really nice business hotel. There's a bar. We're bringing in local musicians. Would love to get your fiance to come and play a little bit there as well, or yourself, Sara. I'm putting you on the spot there. We're going to have, foosball tables and shuffleboards and things that people can just kind of be relaxed and engage with other people. A lot of soft seating, so you can kind of grab a drink, you can grab a soda or whatever and sit down and kind of have that quiet corner with the nice, comfortable furniture that you can have that deeper business conversation with people. We also have a series of boardrooms and these little kind of breakout rooms that we're also creating what we call VC Central at MJ Unpacked. Typically during, the big show in Las Vegas, you have, the venture capital firms. One of them's over at the Wynn, and one of them's over at the Cosmo, and one of them's at the NLA, and one's at the MGM, and they're scattered all over town. And, as I like to joke, I want to trade some efficiency in the capital markets, but, people spend half their week in a cab line in Las Vegas, during the big show. And, I really feel that that's inefficient. And I did create one of these investor suites with Poseidon back in 2015 when I was running MJ Biz. And Emily, to this day, has said that was the most efficient and best show she ever had, because she was right there. She had the privacy of her own kind of business suite on the floor to have her meetings, meet with her portfolio investors or portfolio companies, bring people in that she wanted to talk to about investing in their company, and didn't have to be tucked away in some suite, that nobody could find and people were late to meetings for. And they could walk out and they could see what the action was on the floor, and they had that they could feed off that vibrancy and the energy that happens at trade events. Mm-hmm. So we have, Entourage Effect Capital and Poseidon and Arcadian and Panther, Trailhead and Kenny Ventures and some big, VCs that are setting up shop at our show. And we're also talking to a couple of the MSOs because they've raised billions of dollars of capital, like I said before, and they can set up a meeting where they have larger teams. They can have, catering brought in and have a team lunch, talk about their strategies while they're there, walk out, go meet with other retailers or brands that they might potentially want to acquire, bring them back into their suite, have a private conversation. It's again, creating the hospitality that I would expect to receive it going into somebody else's home. We want people to feel that they'll get at our event.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to have those spaces, especially because and I love the fact that you're doing the QR codes in the retail experience, because I can't tell you how many times I come back from a conference with all these materials, all these cards, and it's like they stay in the bag.
They do, and 80% of the materials that people hand out at trade shows end up in the hotel room garbage. It's just inefficient, and my daughter, who is going to be a lawyer, she's 11. She's going to go to law school, and she is going to help defend our planet. She's pretty convinced of it, and but we have to start making some of those changes. I mean, trade shows generally are not very environmentally efficient. There's a lot of materials that end up in garbage dumps and stuff. I've worked with a guy that had a company that was, repurposing a lot of that stuff and taking, old vinyl banners and creating sunscreens for playgrounds and stuff. So we really want to eliminate a lot of that waste that happens at a trade show, and certainly, having, everything on an app and having, the access to that after the show, and being able to tag stuff. So when you get back, you don't have to be like, okay, where's that brochure from that one guy that I got? And I can't remember his name. And, it's just, again, creating that efficiency and environmentally friendly environment.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have to do our part. I hope that we start seeing some more of that around our packaging in the industry as well.
Hemp, baby, hemp.
That's right. 100%, 110%.
We're staying hyper-focused. A lot of times people ask us, like, what about CBD? And it's like, well, the CBD market has a completely different set of challenges and buyers and sellers. And like that, we're not trying to be everything to everybody. This is really around, cannabis, THC, products that, by the Farm Bill have 0.03% THC or greater. I love the hemp industry. We're not doing our show around hemp, but I mean, I've been waiting, and ever since I brought Ralph Nader to come speak at MJ Biz, years ago, it's like I can't wait to see the hemp industry really actualize itself, and seeing more of these companies that are using hemp for construction materials, using hemp in bioplastics that are truly biodegradable, not like just greenwash, and they can only biodegrade in a industrial composting over 10 years. It's true biodegradable plastics. Renewable, it renews the soil, the construction materials. I mean, there's like 30,000 industrial uses for hemp.
Yeah, I had actually a few episodes back, I had a great conversation with Morris Beagle. He was talking about all the interesting things that he's doing with it, even guitar amps and guitars. It's amazing the things that people are making out of hemp these days.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Clothes,
yeah.
fibers, bags,
construction,
houses,
yeah. Well,
cars.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, and it's amazing. Like I was teaching a class on the history of cannabis at San Francisco City College, and as I started to delve deeper into it while I was preparing to teach, I was floored by the fact that a lot of the prohibition that we had around cannabis and hemp, industrial hemp, was, due to the interference with other industries. And if we'd actually allowed cannabis and hemp to dominate the way it probably should have, we wouldn't have a lot of the ecological and health issues that we do today in our world.
Yeah, I mean, and true, and right, and unfortunately, the way our government works sometimes, large industries with very expensive lobbyists that have very large checkbooks to donate to politicians, don't advance the best interests of society or the representatives, the population they represent. I mean, you're talking about, hemp's going to disrupt the plastics industry. It's going to disrupt the energy industry, and on and on and on and on. I mean, it will eventually rise to the top. I mean, it has to.
Yeah.
But I would think that if we started growing a massive amount of hemp and had the industrial capacities to turn this into construction materials and biofuels and plastics and all of those products, that we could get the cost down to, low. I mean, I think also, in addition to restoring a lot of the soils that have been, tarnished over the years from, massive pesticide use and and runoff from the roads, that we could actually also probably reverse some of the effects of climate change
Yeah. Yeah.
at
I
a massive scale very quickly.
that that's that would be amazing because it's just right
Hemp for,
now.
hemp for president.
Hemp for
Hemp for
president
president.
is right. Yeah, I mean that's we have nieces that are school age, and we worry about what the world's going to be like. I mean, when they're adults, hell, we'll probably be dead by then. But it's our kids. What are they going to have if we don't start making these changes? I'm all,
Well, I got two kids at home, and I worry about it every day.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, I wanted to go back to the event though, because I also wanted to talk to
Yes.
you about the conference sessions because those are always an important part. People get really excited about great content and learning something. And also, it's a great opportunity to see who else is interested in the same subjects you are because I've noticed a lot of my colleagues and even myself, I've made new friends just being in the room with a bunch of people that we're all, intently listening and taking in what the presentation is.
Yeah. So Kim is my wife and my business partner, and she's also our chief marketing officer. She really developed she did develop the conference program.
Oh, wait a second here.
This is one of the best
I think,
programs
oh,
I've ever seen.
1 second, George. I think we're breaking up. I'm just going to
All
make a
right.
note where we're
Yeah.
breaking up so that Ed can edit it real quick. Okay. Do you want to
You
start?
got me okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Um, the conference program, like,
Oh, you're
Kim
breaking
is
up
my wife.
again.
Damn it. All right, let me put my aluminum foil hat on. That's one of the problems living on Bainbridge Island. I call it the island of bad cell phone reception. Better now?
Yeah, you're great now.
Okay. So, listen, I think content is so important. And, when shows are trying to do, be everything to everybody, they have this big, broad conference program. They sometimes will fill seats by who's sponsoring them and paying them the most money, which doesn't necessarily equate to the best content. And it's so broad, like you can't really get to a higher level of discussion. And by concentrating our audience and qualifying our audience, like we get to do something nobody's ever done, is have this higher level conversations that are really meaningful, that people tend to be on an executive level, be a little bit more collaborative, where on a kind of a staff level and a sales, executive level, they're very competitive, right? And so, we're excited about our conference program. We do have a strategic partnership with BDSA, unbelievable data and insights that they provide. So they're going to be leading off with our keynote session. Kelly Nielsen, who came from Nielsen Media, no relationship to the company's founder, will be leading things off. We're going to be talking about how brands can partner, successfully partner with retailers to really sell more products. And that session's kind of layered because right now in our industry, the relationship with the consumer almost always exists with the retailer, and there's certainly cases like that in other industries. Like Whole Foods owns a relationship with the consumer in a lot of cases, because you're going to go there based on the perception that you're getting a better quality product, which is true, to a large extent. But when you look at most CPG industries, the relationship with the consumer lays with the brand.
Right.
And we're just not there yet. So, brands use those retail partnerships as a way to really help promote their product and also help support the retailers so that they can be a part of their product mix. One of the sessions I'm really excited about is, and I don't know if I mentioned, we're putting the band back together. We have the Blues Brothers playing live at the House of Blues as a benefit concert for Last Prisoner Project. But we do have Dan Aykroyd, who's, a very successful brand and product marketer himself, with his Crystal Skull Vodka, Jim Belushi and Hugh Hefner's daughter, Christy Hefner, doing a fireside chat. I'm going to be talking with Steve D'Angelo and a gentleman, Javon Bunch, who's got like 30 plus years of, CPG experience working for companies like Coach and, huge branded companies, and really kind of talking about that transformation when, kind of cannabis goes corporate and what to expect when we start seeing a lot of these consolidations. We're doing sessions about how to manage through an acquisition. It's really important to a lot of people in the space if they do sell their businesses. How do you integrate your team into the new business and the culture changes and challenges that come along with that to really make it successful. Andy Williams is going to be moderating that session, who recently sold Medicine Man to, I believe, Columbia Care. And he's been a pioneer in the space. And we've got somebody from Columbia Care and Air Wellness, Jennifer Drake, who's the Chief Operating Officer, Andrew Kestner, who's the Director of M&A at Air Wellness or Columbia Care. We're doing a session on how to replicate and localize your retail brand in the new markets. It's really important for people to understand that what works and you said you're in the Oakland Piedmont area, like what works there might not work in San Francisco.
Right.
So even just a small geographical shift like that can be very different on how your consumers are going to want to have that retail experience. So really understanding how to understand your local markets when you're going into them and how to really create that engagement so that you can create success out of the gate. Let's see. We've got some great people talking about, really kind of creating that positive impact. I think a lot of operators in your local communities, a lot of operators have really taken that kind of community outreach to a next level in our industry. We've got some Pamela Taylor from the MAP Group moderating a panel. We've got Rabbi James Kahn as the Director of National Outreach for Holistic Industries. We've got Gary Little, Managing Partner of the Cola Group. We've got some really great speakers coming into this program. Marty Higgins is going to be in one of our sessions, who runs Urbana in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know our Marty, yeah.
Everybody knows Marty and everybody loves Marty.
It's true.
He's a stalwart in the industry. He's been a great friend over the years. But and that's the cool part about this, getting to meet these people that are so passionate and really driving this industry forward and understanding what makes them tick and what they're worried about when they go to bed at night. That's really part of what I think just energizes me about creating these types of conferences.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see just like the different people who have some of the subtle changes that they've made that have been so impactful. And when you mentioned Marty, I thought about when he first was opening his dispensaries, and he had said to me, Sarah, people are going to have a basket and they're going to be able to pick off the shelf. And I just looked at him and I thought, whoa, that's a new model.
Yeah.
And it's, I love seeing that innovation, and I love being proved wrong, because I was like, I think you're going to have a lot of, in high school and college, I worked for JCPenney. And what they call, loss, they called it shrinkage. We'd have to do shrinkage reports. So all I could think of was, that sounds like shrinkage. But it wasn't.
Well, what got me in the trade show space is I was helping my dad out, who had a off-price liquidation business. So we would liquidate excess manufacturers' inventory and resell it. And we actually hired a guy that used to be a JCPenney buyer for this, and he had only one account. It was to sell back to JCPenney. He knew all the buyers and everything else. But I remember those shrinkage reports. I think they passed them back to the vendors and said, "We've had some shrinkage here. We're going to charge you back on those."
Yeah. Oh, that tickles me that you know that one too. I still have nightmares about that job.
I imagine. So I want to ask you. Listen, let's put you on the couch for a minute. So, what was it that moved you to get into the cannabis industry?
I always liked cannabis. I was 13 the first time I tried it, and it's funny because one of my friends that's going to be coming to my wedding is actually the friend that I got high with for the first time. We live on a golf course, so we went out into the woods in the winter. We smoked a little. We didn't get high. We went back to the senior that we got it from, and we asked him for our money back. And he said, sure thing. And he took our bag, and we never heard anything else.
You must have forgot your receipt.
Oh, totally. Early lesson. But through the years, I always appreciated it. I didn't really realize how much it could do until I was 37, and I ended up getting sick all the time. They told me that I had IBS, but medications weren't helping. And so a friend of mine had a medical card, and he was like, I think you should try, I know you smoke weed, Sarah. I think you should try smoking it and seeing if it'll help. And so he ended up getting me a gram of, I think it was Sensi Star. Sensi Star and Blue Dream. He got me a gram of each of those. And all of a sudden, I wasn't getting sick after I was eating. But as it started to it was cyclical, and I ended up finding out I had stage 3 colon cancer. So,
oh my.
Yeah, it was a trip. And my mom is a hematology oncology nurse and cancer researcher who did the clinical trials on the chemo that I ended up taking years later. So I knew that THC would help with like nausea and getting you eating, but we didn't know as much about it. Nobody was talking about CBD back then. And so, I made some silly mistakes like getting too high before I went to see my oncologist. Which is never a good thing. You're staring at him and be like, can't have this conversation today, man. But, it got me eating. I actually, it helped me with nausea because when you're going through colon cancer, you really have to be careful of pharmaceuticals because the ones that are constipating can actually kill you. It's like, you never think you could die of constipation, but when you have colon cancer, you can. So I was able to forego using my opiates and using my anti-nausea drugs. It was really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, and now I use it.
Okay.
I have 10 years out, I have neuropathy still left over from it, and I use CBD ratios to help that. I don't have to use any other medications. So, and
That is so awesome.
it's a lot of it is awesome. I was going to say it's a lot of fun, but no, it's not. It's awesome though.
It is awesome. And listen, thanks. I mean, that's kind of personal, and I mean, I'm sure that you share that because of your passion for the plant, but it's important for people to hear that too, because there are a lot of people that are out there sick. There are a lot of very questionably safe pharmaceutical products out there, and this really gets down to plant medicine. It was really interesting when I was in the tea industry. Tea is a very healthy product, and there's certain teas, like black tea actually contains anti-UV stuff, so you can use black tea as a sunscreen.
Whoa.
There's oolong teas that are actually really effective in breaking down fats and fatty acids. So they'll see that they'll actually use a squirt bottle with oolong tea in it to clean the tables at restaurants. There's pu'er teas that I know people that have taken and massively reduced their cholesterol, that had high cholesterol, just by drinking pu'er tea on a regular basis. So there's just some really cool stuff out there. And then when I got into the marijuana industry, or as a guy once said, let's start a pot show, I ended up reading this book that I helped a friend publish, and I literally opened up this page, and she was talking about how in the tea industry, we know that Emperor Shen Yun, who's the father of modern herbal medicine that lived 5,000 years ago in China, discovered tea, or is accredited for discovering tea. But she had this passage that's also accredited for discovering cannabis, which I didn't know. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to be working for the same guy. It's that whole plant medicine can really help people. And it's and we know how marijuana has been very helpful for people that are suffering from PTSD and other, kind of psychiatric traumas and stuff. And what groups like MAPS is doing now with MDMA assisted therapy and people using psilocybin and LSD for treatments of, issues. I mean, it's so exciting to be on the front edge of this renaissance, right?
Yeah, it really, really is. And it's, it's just really rewarding. And the medical stuff aside, which is, by the way, I love geeking out on, I totally dig the anophelistic side of cannabis too, just like bud structure, aroma, just, delving into why things are the way they are. Why do I get a certain high with a certain terpene profile? And that's stuff that we're just on the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
I'll tell you, George, I never thought I would, if you told me, 11 years ago, I'd be doing this. I'd tell you were nuts because I had a very
You'd be
comfortable
like, "You're
office
stoned."
downtown. Yeah, exactly. I'd be like, what do you mean? Because years earlier, I worked in operations management for years, and I was a tech buyer before that. And I was in between jobs, and there was a dispensary looking for an office manager. And this was, I think, like in 2003 or something like that. And at that point, I was like, fascinating, but I would be entirely unemployable after I took that job.
Mm-hmm.
And with the reason it was easy for me to take this position was like, cancer changes the
No
way you
drug
look
test.
at life, you know?
So I got a funny story for you. So when I was in college and I was getting my degree in microbiology, I saw an ad for job at the summer intern job at the microbiology lab at Pabst Blue Ribbon down in Milwaukee. So I went down there, I interviewed for the job, and there wasn't a lot of microbiology students back then. So after I met with them, like, oh, great, well, you're hired, and we just need you to go downstairs and do a test with our doctor, make sure your back's okay, from a safety, and then you got to take a drug test. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'd gotten high on the way down there, right?
Oh, no.
So I go down and I see the doctor. I said, listen, I got to get back check the back, and I had to go offsite for the drug test to a lab. And I said, I have to get back to school to take an exam. Can I come back down in a couple of weeks, right? So I go back to school, and I'm like, getting golden seal root and drinking orange juice and doing all the things that you got to do. Go back down, take the drug test, and then about a week later, I call and say, are we good? What's my start date? And they're like, well, there was a problem with your drug test. I said, what? How could that be? I've never used drugs before in my life. And because of course, right after I took the drug test, I started smoking pot again. And so I get back up there. So I had a buddy of mine that had gone through rehab, and I said, hey, can you meet me next? And I'd already been to the testing lab, so I said, can you meet me at the McDonald's next door to this at like 9 a.m? And I had him pee in a little scope bottle, and I kept it in my pocket, went in there, dumped it in there. And the whole problem that they had with the first test was that, like, I peed in my cup. They had me leave it in the bathroom, and you're supposed to seal it and sign it, and the nurse signs it so that it's a verified sample. And they had a temp working that day. I didn't know what the procedure was. And anyways, I got the job.
I can't wait for the day that people don't have to worry about that anymore.
So you were talking before, and I kind of jumped back and kind of went through the event about, what we're going to see, with brands and things starting to really as things kind of start developing and maturating in our industry. And I've just really seen in the last couple of years, like, some of the smarter venture capital firms and investors in this industry have realized that, for the first 5 or 6 years, you see companies raising, $15, $20, $30 million for a technology platform and everything else, and kind of that picks and axes, play it safe, don't get into plan touching businesses. They're really starting to invest into the brands and the retailers now because we're getting close. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a number of events like hopefully Safe Banking soon. Getting rid of the 280 tax code. Certainly expungement is incredibly important, and decriminalization. But that, from a brand and retailer standpoint, those are going to have huge valuation jumps. The thing I'm most excited about is really what I'm seeing, the new products being developed in the market that will really support what I think will be the biggest growth phase of our industry, and that's the development of on-premise consumption. You look at the alcohol industry, it's a $200 billion industry, and 48% of that $200 billion is on-premise consumption, going to a bar or going to a restaurant and having a glass of wine. We can have that in cannabis, and I don't think it's going to look like a hookah lounge. It might be hookah lounges and people can go and smoke flower, but with the, kind of mirroring that kind of social lubrication of the bar or the lounge or the restaurant, and being able to go in and get a Lagunitas, cannabis-infused beer, or, companies like Viv and Oak that are making cannabis-infused wines, and having a Bolt cannabis-infused iced tea with your lunch instead of a martini or a beer, really creates the opportunity for us to create those lounges that, people can go in and have multiple instances of consumption that layer on top of each other, that have quicker uptimes and faster downtimes so they can also get home safely. it's really going to be game changing for our industry. And I know that, there's been social consumption movement in Nevada and in Colorado and California, but we don't have all the pieces there yet. And if you think about what that looks like, I mean, you go out and hang out with your friends and maybe have a few too many and not feel hungover in the morning. Like, how great would that be, right?
That'd be so nice.
You probably have less bar fights. It's, the physiological and societal damage, from alcohol compared to cannabis, as we all know in the industry, is massive. And we're really close, and this is going to, might be the next 5 years before we really see that fully maturate, but it's going to be huge.
I agree. I think that, something that's going to be pushing us more toward that too is just one of the things that came from the pandemic was that more people started experimenting with cannabis during this time. I mean, even, my mother-in-law, who's in her 80s, cannabis was never really for her, but she started, I got her some of the dosist pens this year. I got her a high CBD and then a 2-to-1 THC to CBD. And she told me, one day she was stuck at home. She has issues with her health and her immune system. So even more so, she had to be careful during these past months. And she said, there was just a day where I was feeling so low and lonely and had cabin fever. And she's like, Sarah, I decided to take a puff of that pen that had a little more THC. And she's like, I took a puff. It didn't get me high. It put me in a better state of mind so I could actually cope with everything that was going on.
That is awesome.
It is.
My mother-in-law will probably, hopefully she doesn't listen to this podcast and freak out that I'm telling everybody this, but, and she had to go in for knee surgery, and she lives out in New Jersey, and she comes and visits, and we took her to our local dispensary, Paper and Leaf, and brought her, helped her shop and got her some chocolates and stuff. And, when she got done with knee surgery, it was a very long period of pain and healing that goes on and physical therapy. And, she basically didn't take any of the opioids that they were trying to force down her and was able to use the cannabis. And, she recovered faster and she felt better about it. And then she's got her bridge club and she's like telling her friends about that. And now it's like, they kind of have their little, club where they kind of, make sure that everybody's got a little bit of product for those times. And it's cool to see that going on. And, I was talking to another friend, Scott Rutledge, who was very instrumental in legalizing cannabis for the state of Nevada. And this was a couple of years ago, and he was out in Tennessee, and he's like, there's this whole network of grandparents that go and they basically have their kids muling drugs back from the legal state for them. Because, they want the salves and they want the, high CBD stuff because it makes them feel better. Like getting old sucks and your body hurts sometimes. And, it can just be it can make you feel young again. It can really just re-energize people. And, you hear stories like that. You hear stories like the one you just shared about, your experiences with cannabis and IBS and, where this has such an amazing impact on people's lives that it's hard not to be inspired to really help move the industry forward every day.
It's true. And when we're looking at consumption events too, I mean, people have these fears of, people getting too high and things happening, but really all we need to do is empower people through education and, and we'll be good. I mean, and the one thing that I've noticed too, like back in the day, I used to throw parties and we would, there would be consumption at the parties. And I remember when I would be looking to get a venue, it was always so hard because people were like, whoa, what's it going to be like? And then after the party, whoever owned the venue would come up to me and be like, you can come back any time. Everyone behaved. The bathrooms aren't trashed. This was downright pleasant.
I was just thinking of something else too on that. I have a friend of mine that he was in the tea industry and he was working for Starbucks, and then I had him speak at MJ Biz and Tilray hired him, and then he was running Dockside here. But when he was running Dockside, they used to sample the products, and what they would do is, and I'm not a big dabber myself, but they would do dab hits of pure CBD isolate, and they said it would completely reset them.
Yeah.
And think about that, right? So if somebody consumes too much at a party or at a bar or on-premise social lounge or whatever, like they could like have dab rigs where you could like, rip some CBD and be right as rain and get home safe. You can't drink enough water if you're over intoxicated from alcohol. It's just a function of time, right? You still got to wait, an hour per ounce or whatever of alcohol for it to pass through your system. And, you significantly reduce, kind of the harm from drunk driving or intoxicated driving from that.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's the reason that whenever I go to events, I always carry a high CBD pen with me. Not necessarily because I'm going to need it, because I definitely partake, but if I know myself well enough to know that if I take more than I need, I'm not social. So,
Yeah.
but I take it
Yeah.
because, you see people and you see that look on their face, especially if they're new to it or they're just a little bit tired that day. It could be anything. And you just hand them the pen and it's good.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and everybody's there and they're exuberant and people are passing stuff around. And it's very social. So you might, what a strain that's a really high THC strain that's okay for somebody might not be okay for you. And all of a sudden you walked into that and make a bad choice and you become overly intoxicated or overly high. It's definitely a good way to play this. I'm sorry, my dog Lucky just came in. He wanted to say hi.
Oh, hey, Lucky. Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing you at the event. And
Oh my God, me too, Sarah.
if for anybody who wants to follow you on social media or sign up for the event and learn more about it, where would they go?
I always have to stop myself because I realize it makes me sound old if I say go to www. But anyways, our website, our main website is mjunpacked.com. You can find out information about there. Again, retail executive, title manager, or higher can attend for 100% for free. And then we also have a publication, mjbrandinsights.com. Our Twitter and social media handles are at mjunpacked and at mjbrandinsights. Sorry, my dog's telling me that he wants to go outside and play.
Oh, they rule our world. I know. I have a very demanding cat.
Well, and so we got a lab. Our dog, we had a dog for 16 years that passed away last summer, and so my wife really wanted to get in a dog, and I had the kids like kind of tell them like, and I'm like, every time Mom brings us getting a dog, let's just say we don't want a dog right now. And so on her birthday, we took her to go to the breeder, and we gave her a box that was filled with dog toys, and we took her to the breeder to pick up a lab puppy. And so she decided on the way home that she was going to name the dog Lucky because she felt really lucky that day. So, but we couldn't bring the dog home until he was 8 weeks old. So for the next 4 weeks, every time we were on a call with like the family on a Zoom call, she would go, "Oh, I can't wait to get Lucky." And I'm thinking to myself, that just doesn't sound right to be talking to the family about.
I love that. I love that. Labs are
Right.
awesome. They're such sweet
Yeah,
pups.
he's really a smart dog. He's 9 months old, so he's like full on like toddler, young adolescent, ball of energy.
Has he grown into his feet yet?
Oh yeah, he is. He's 77 pounds already.
Oh, that's a big boy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, for listeners out there who want to check out social media for Planted, we are on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We are Planted with Sara on Twitter and IG and Facebook. We are Planted with Sara Pion. If you want to check out our website, it is plantedwithsara.com. You can also go to our parent company, which is Radio Misfits Network. That is our network. There's a lot of other great shows on there as well. And also you can listen to Planted anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast. So we're talking about Spotify, Pandora, Stitcher, Amazon, Google, Apple, you name it, we're there. And remember that Planted is now 2 times a month. So if you get a chance, yeah, I know. It's so exciting. I get to talk to more people every month, and it always. I love talking to colleagues in the space and sharing ideas and finding out what everyone's doing. And I'm just really excited for you, George, for your event. I think it's going to be fabulous, and it's totally different. It's definitely something that we've needed for quite some time.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And we didn't want to come out and launch another event that in an oversaturated market. We really wanted to, focus on how do we create value, how do we help people be successful, and really kind of hone in on this kind of sub-segment that tends to be underserved at typical national shows. And listen, I mean, one of my objectives when I ran MJ Biz was to make it a must-attend event. But I've known for a while, like a lot of the senior, brands and retailers are going to Las Vegas and setting up meetings and going to parties, but they don't really find any value going to the show anymore. We want to create a home for them.
Yeah.
So we're very excited to be able to create this event, and we'll be in New York in May of 2022 and back in Las Vegas again in October of 22. We're excited about creating this event.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your passion, your innovation, and we'll see you in Vegas. And for those of you out there who are working in brands or dispensaries, check it out. MJ Unpacked. And until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and it's a wild world out there, so be good to each other. Take care, everyone.